Pedro from A&P-Reacts. I'm here today with a great Sal of A Pale Horse Named Death to talk about the upcoming record Infernum in Terra. That title could not be more appropriate. Let me just say that. I mean, I think we're living hell on earth right now, so I really love the title of your record coming out September 24th. How's it going?
Going good. Been doing press, doing some interviews. Really excited that the video came out the other day. I don't know if you saw it, but I'm really proud of it on how it turned out, and the response so far has been really good. And so far so good considering this crazy world with all these crazy things happening right now. This record once again ushers in another apocalyptic era for everyone and the fans.
Did the pandemic allowed you to have a little bit more time, a little bit more solace that perhaps you needed in order for this record to come out with a much better sound definition or perhaps even execution as it has when you look back at the two previous albums?
Well, what it allowed me to do was focus on, this is the first album where I produced and engineered it entirely myself. And it allowed me to take the time to hone in those skills. There was no pressure on my back to write another record. I actually was ahead of the label didn't even expect me to do, I don't think, another record so soon, being that there was like a 6-year gap between the second and the third. But I was so dissatisfied with the how things turned out on the last record that I felt I needed to get back on the horse and write this new material that I had going on in my head, and I wanted to get it out. And we were approaching the 10-year anniversary of our debut, which was And Hell Will Follow Me. So I wanted to have a title and a record that was themed again around hell, but not be so predictable. And so when I started sketching some ideas, it was at the very beginning of when we were starting to hear about virus and pandemic. And then here in New York State, they started shutting down March 17th. So I did a bunch of sketching in that earlier part of the year, recorded a bunch of stuff. And I'm like the type of writer that I'll just record some ideas and I'll walk away for months. I won't force or sit on something or dwell on a piece of music like, oh, this has got to be it. This has got to be great. This has got to be this way. Because I'm a true believer that when you force art or music, it's going to come out like shit. And I know that from past experiences when you're in a room with a bunch of people and like, okay, we got to write a record, and everyone forces garbage and the record sucks. So I'm a true believer in taking my time. So I literally was away for the whole summer, didn't touch nothing. I was busy working on a car I had gotten, an old muscle car. I was busy doing this, busy doing that. And then finally end of September, I started thinking, okay, well, I think I need to reacquaint myself with everything I did, see where I'm at. And I started getting that itch again, because there's something about the fall and winter that really makes me want to make music also. Maybe it's the short days, maybe it's the long darkness, maybe it's the cold. So literally from October to November, I had dropped 4 or 5 songs. Plus then I started working on all the soundscapes on the record, and I had spoken to my A&R guy at SPV, Manuel, and said, hey, I'm working on a new record. What do you think? When would you like it? And he was like, well, it'd be great to release it next September, maybe April delivery date. Okay. Well, I was ahead of schedule. I actually delivered it at the end of March. We were mastering in March. I did all the vocals in January, February of 2021, wrapped everything up, mixed, and it's kind of how it worked. I try not to put too much pressure on myself, like, oh, this has got to be done by a certain time. I just do it, and when I see I'm on a roll, I already have an idea when I'll maybe be done. And I think that's the best method. I think letting things fall in place naturally is a good idea.
So is it fair to say that the record kind of defined itself as you progress through it? You didn't really come with it with a mindset that I want the album to sound like this, to be like this, to be done this way.
I knew how I wanted it to sound. I wanted it to sound, raw and powerful, but yet very retro with the fuzzy distortion and the retro stuff that I'm into. Hence why when we mastered, which or Applebound mastered the record, he instantly got that feeling from the record. So he ran the record through all these analog hot tube, glass tube, vacuum tube equipment to give it that late 70s, early 80s kind of warmth to it. Because obviously these days, everyone records digitally. So we don't have that beautiful warmth of analog tape like in the old days. So he's a big believer in that. And he really felt that the record, the way it was going, and we would I was sending him rough stuff and he would give me pointers also. And we he really was a massive help at the end as far as giving me his objective opinions, which is not often the case with most mastering engineers. They usually just get it, they do it, they send it back, they want you to pay them, and that's it. But Maor gets really involved in the records that he does, so that was huge. He got that feeling from the record that there was some kind of Sabbathy old style riffs and simple, distorted, fuzzy, heavy stuff going on, very very old school sounding drums, and so he ran it through all this analog equipment to have it come back with that analog warmth.
Maybe this is too early to ask you this question, but have you had a chance to look back at the record and see the story that this album tells? Because I feel like every album tells a story of its creator. So do you see already a story coming out in terms of what this album represents to you?
Actually, for the first time in a little while, I listened to the whole record yesterday while I was doing some bookkeeping, and I just put my headphones on. So I'll listen from top to bottom again, because it's been about a month and a half I haven't done that, and sometimes when I listen to this stuff, it gives me this swelling kind of emotional feeling, because some stuff really tells a really dark story that exists inside of myself. As Even though I consider myself very I'm grateful and very privileged for a lot of things that have happened in my life, there's also things that I'm also sad about, going back to when I was as far back as a kid. And it tells a story, but again, I didn't want the record to be from top to bottom about me, woe is me. I kind of try to leave things open-ended so people can connect to it. I did touch on songs that are on a very touch on the dark side of the biblical, demonic side of things. I touched on things that were just completely, or had nothing to do with anything, like when I was under anesthesia, like the song Two-Headed Snake. So I didn't want to, like, previous records almost seemed like maybe every song was about, suicide and depression. And even I have to stop for a second and maybe think about some other subjects, because it also takes me down into that rabbit hole that I already am in, and it makes it sometimes even more darker for me. So, but it does, when I listen to it, tell a story of exactly what I was going through in my mind when I started working on this record. There was a lot of changes going on. Pretty much I've been like standalone in many ways in my own world. It's not like I have it's not the typical band where it's a bunch of guys hanging out and every week or something. It's nothing like that at all. Um, uh, so it invokes a lot of feelings and a lot of sense of accomplishment. Though I get really emotional, like even when I see the video, which was directed by Joel Nilsson. He was the same director that did the last video, Fell in My Hole. And when I watched that video for the first time, I started tearing up and getting emotional, because I was like, here I am again. There's this monumental accomplishment again. So I know that when I am no longer existing, there's still things that can be traced about me or the band or whatever. And this I feel like every song that gets recorded and releases is logged into the archives for a very long time. And I'm no spring chicken, you know, I'm not old, but I'm not, you
You're
know, 51. I just turned 51 in July.
Yeah, so you're vintage.
I'm getting vintage. You know, that feeling of when you hit like after 50, it's like you start feeling like now we're going downhill. And I just feel like if I can keep on making music, uh, great. I keep on releasing stuff down the road. When I'm at a point where I can maybe no longer do it, people can look back and say, this guy was a nut job. He really was talented and did a lot of different cool things. I take great pride in being a unique type of musician that can literally sit there and do everything as a multi-instrumentalist and record and produce an album. And so that was one of my big bucket list accomplishments, because I've always done the previous records with a partner. So I always wanted to be, do a record, and I felt now was the right time to do it. I felt I had gathered through my 35 years of career enough knowledge, experience, and patience.
So the next question I have for you is in terms of the sound that this record has, do you see a continuation from previous albums, or is there something on this album that you see it setting it apart from the previous records?
I feel that there's the root core that continues, which is the sound, but it's also something that sets a new ground and a new level and chapter for me as a creative person. Hence why, although I did give the opportunity to the artist that did the first three albums to do artwork, they respectfully declined, and like, okay, well, everything happens for a reason. And across, this incredible artist named Kelvin Duran from Dublin, Ireland. And when I had some discussions with him, I had actually quite a few artists submit stuff to me, which was pretty impressive. I was surprised when I kind of put the word out there how many artists wanted to do something with me, which is great to know. But Kelvin stood out to me, and as soon as I gave him the title, he kind of ran with it, and I mean, the cover's the cover, which is amazing, but when you see the rest of the layout, with all the stuff that's going on, and if you get the vinyl, the gatefold, when it opens up, there's this huge scene going on in there. If you get the CD, the digital, the booklet has all this incredible 15th century style tapestry, demonic tapestry stuff of their depiction of what hell was back then. And I'm a really big, I've always been a fan of this type of this line art, the wood engravings that they did back in the 1500s, 1400s, 1600s, all those, that type of like witch trial type of stuff, that type of artwork, which was all done with lines, no color. And that was his thing. And that's what really sold it for me. So when he started sending me sketches of the artwork, I was like, this is incredible. This is a whole new era. This is a whole new, and the color scheme, which I didn't even suggest, really, because I told him, I was like, look, let's stay away from green. This association with green and I enough, I wanted to kind of have a fresh look and a fresh vibe. This band is its own entity. My music is its own entity. Despite my core roots, I'll always have that. But I wanted to have a fresh, new presentation to the fans. And so I definitely would say it's a new chapter. And I have a little bit even more of a new twisted approach to writing the songs. And it's just, I consider it again always a blessing when I can get everything together because there's so much work goes into a record, so much work and time, and I'll tell you right now, look, I got 3 kids, I have a family. I wasn't sitting on my butt, I was working also. So I was doing this record at nighttime. I was doing it during the Christmas, the holiday vacations. So I was working really, really hard to keep everything going. And people have this illusion that, like I'm sitting on some kind of mountain with a mansion, No, I got to work. I got to work. There's been good times and rough, bad times. But the reality in music is you gotta have your hands on about a dozen things if you want to keep doing music. So it's
100%.
definitely a new chapter.
100%. Speaking of the new chapter, I really like the fact that you went with that different artwork because I personally, as a fan, I felt the sound on this album while still having a connection with the past. It definitely opens the door for a new future as far as where you guys are going to go. And having an artwork that also separates this record from the previous albums allows the whole package to be a lot more impactful from the get go. So I really like how you put everything together for this album. It really allows itself to stand on its own. And another thing that I enjoyed about this record was the way you structured the album. I mean, you have the intro, you have an interlude. The album is really well put together as far as allowing me, the listener, to feel like I have a path that I know from the moment I press play, you're going to keep me on this road, you're going to take me down this journey. Uh, when you start putting that structure together, is that something that is done at the end once you have all the tracks and you try to figure out what's the best way, or you always kind of have in your mind a path that you want the record to take, and then you start to morph some items in order to better define what their roadmap is going to be?
The ideas are always there. I was actually touching on the soundscapes as I was making the record, and I would go back and forth, and then I would listen to stuff and say, "No, I got to change that or shorten that," and so I'm a big fan of the cinematic approach. I'm a big fan of having soundscapes and suspense and build up to the music. Um, this is just my thing. We've always touched on that from day one with the first record. There would be an entrance or an exit or an intermission, and I felt that I really wanted to make almost like a horror movie type of feel. That's why like the first soundscape is a pretty twisted thing going. There's so much going on in there that if you close your eyes, it gets pretty scary. And then the middle, and then the ending. Um, I like having this cinematic feel. It's not in 100% a concept from beginning. We're not telling a story about a dude that came back to life or something or whatever, or some story from beginning to end. It's just a presentation of ambiance and feelings and emotions and a suspense. Where again, I like everything's open-ended book. If you have a great set of headphones or great speakers, or if you're an audiophile, you can just close your eyes, have a drink, or you know do whatever it is that is your thing, and close your eyes and sit back and listen. And it's meant to listen from beginning to end. And so I try to balance the songs where it's not an onslaught of all heavy stuff. I like to break it up. Obviously, I like to bring in a lot of instrumentation. I did bring in more piano again on this record. I'm a big fan of piano being combined with this heavy music and being underneath the guitars at times. And um, it's a presentation of an emotional, cinematic, dirty, raw experience, gritty. When I hear the record, it kind of reminds me of like, 80 grit sandpaper. That's how I, my visuals, I try to transfer into sound. And again, the guitars, I didn't want to sit there and overdo the guitars to, using all this, I use a basic formula and I know what's good, and I brought in some elements to give it that gritty sound, and that was it. And I kind of stuck with it. That was the rhythm section through the record. So yeah, I'm a big fan, and I'm gonna do more of that. I already, to be honest with you, Pedro, like, look, with the situation going on, I already have my mind on. I already recorded one idea. Like I am already leaning towards making a collection of new music again over the winter, and possibly then just have another record come out. You know, who knows when? I'll talk to my label about that if they're how long they want to wait. I know everyone, the typical thing, and an interview told me this, that they were interviewing Cannibal Corpse the other day, and they just put out a new record, I believe, and they said this is the first time in 30 years where touring's not on the table. They're just back in the studio making another record, because of the current situation that's going on. And that's kind of like where I'm at. I'm like, well, I think I'm just best thing I can give people is more music, and that's probably my biggest high, because I can do that on my own time, and it's what we're able to do right now.
It's a
Touring is
little bit
not
of therapy.
an,
It's a little bit of therapy for you as well, because it allows your mind to stay connected with something that you really enjoy, and allows you to exit the world that you're in while you're creating that music that you're putting together. So it's really an interesting therapeutical way. You mentioned the guitars. I have to ask you this about the guitars on this album. Is there a little bit of two sides to the same coin as far as the guitars go? Because I feel like sometimes you brought a lot of light into the room with the guitar sound, and at times you brought a lot of darkness into the room with the guitar sound. Do you see it that way, or is there something else?
I would think that what gives you that effect and feel is maybe the actual melodic melody that might be happening at the moment. Again, I kept, I can't reveal the whole secret sauce, but I kept the same guitar execution, recording technique, the same from song to song. But then, of course, the melody guitars that you would hear, they would have different kinds of EQs and effects. And then, of course, then there's the guitar solos. Now, the guitar solos is something that I always bring in from the outside. Joe Taylor, Eddie Heedles, they would get the music. And fortunately, because of Dropbox and FTP upload, and they have little recording stations in their homes, they recorded the leads and sent them to me. So, and then I would get them dry and then give them the atmospheric effect that we wanted to give it. But I had a technique where, I would do, 2 tracks would be with this pickup, 2 tracks would be with that pickup on the guitar, but the settings on the amp would always be the same, and then there would be that designated old school 70s fuzzy track going on that would just be right there underneath everything. And kind of like it was just mapped out like that for every song. You don't want to bounce around too much. You want to have consistency from beginning to end. Otherwise, the record's going to sound a little bit too haphazard. There has to be that consistent butter, or peanut butter going on through the whole record to keep that sandwich together.
I'm sure you've seen comments from fans on social media referring to the singles that you released a little bit as grungy doom. What's your take on that?
It's fine. Look, I'm 51. I mean, I was in my prime when grunge came out. At the same time, the doom part, I mean, I've been a Black Sabbath fan since I was 9 years old. So it's 9-10 years old. So I was playing Black Sabbath songs before Black Sabbath was super popular, in the popular world, mainstream world, So it's great. You know what? I'd rather be labeled that than to be labeled some, new metal. You know what I mean, dude? I mean, I'd rather be labeled doom grunge or dirge doom, or even hard rock doom, because all these vocal melodies and things are inspired from hard rock. I'm a big David Bowie fan. I'm a big Led Zeppelin fan. I'm a big Hendrix fan. Like I go back into those archives when I want inspiration. I'm not listening to the new stuff that's going on. So yeah, to me it's fine. You want to call it doom grunge, that's a great title. That's fine. I just do what I do. Those are my influences. Of course, yeah, I saw Soundgarden in 1988, at L'Amour's in Brooklyn. And when I saw Soundgarden, yeah, they hit me hard. I was like, this band's great. And they're tuned in C sharp like Sabbath. And they were amazing. And I remember me and Josh, we got so into them. And when their Bad Motorfinger came out, we were just like, oh man, these guys, how are they going to top this record? Which to me is still the pinnacle record, with, produced by Terry Day. So, and of course, that whole minor feel that Alice in Chains had going on was very cool. Believe it or not, I don't own a lot of Alice in Chains records. I only have a best of record, but everyone makes the correlation with Alice in Chains. So I'm like, okay, it's better than being compared to Kanye West. I mean,
I was gonna say Limp Bizkit, but okay, Kanye West.
yeah, or whatever, like just something that's like new metal that's lame to me. I'd rather be. That's where I'm from. That's fine. I think I'm always going to carry that torch. I'm not afraid of being stuck in my ways, and I'm not looking to be new. I'm not looking to reinvent the mousetrap. I'm just setting the mousetrap.
uh, what game plan did you have for your vocals on this album? Because I honestly, I really love what you did with your voice on this record. I felt like you were able to bring the atmosphere of the sound to life through your voice and really bring the lyrics into the forefront.
You can
Did you
hear
have
them on this record.
Sorry?
You can hear the vocals on this record. That
Oh,
was one
totally.
of my gripes with the previous record.
Totally. The vocals are right there.
I look, I don't consider myself, like, I don't put myself in a category with these other great vocalists. I don't walk around like I'm the singer. I'm the first guy to like pick up a box and get dirty. Um, I I just do what I hear in my head the best I can. And obviously over the years you get better and better, like anything. You practice, you push yourself, you try new ideas. And I do bring these old rock and roll influences into my world. I'm a big Jim Morrison fan when it comes to vocals. His nonchalant approach, where he's almost, is what I love. Then I'll go 360 or 180 and be, I'm a huge fan of Trent Reznor's vocal approach. I'm a big fan of how Trent Reznor gets things done, and I like his whole. I've been into him since the late '80s, and I'm a big fan of how he makes it all happen. I literally sit there researching YouTube videos of him in the studio on how he works, because the guy's just brilliant. And so I don't consider myself like some kind of. I just try to get the melody across the best I can. I put my emotion into it, because there is a lot of singers out there that are great, not because they're great singers, but because they're great at expressing the emotion and connecting to a list. Again, Jim Morrison was not an operatically trained vocalist, but he had such tone and such attitude that that's what captured the fan. But then again, it's to each his own. So I'm only trying the best I can. This is all a result of where 12 years ago I was trying various projects with other singers, and I got tired of their irresponsibility and lack of work ethic, and I was like, well, I'm going to do this new idea. And this whole idea started out as a studio project idea. This was never intended to be a band that's out there on all the news metal sites and people critiquing me, because I was very, very afraid of rejection, very afraid of being picked on about it, or very afraid of hearing how bad I suck. You know what I mean? So, but one thing led to another, and I started getting a little bit comfortable and making my own, carving my own vibe. And I think that you just, with time, now 4 records later, learning from a lot of mistakes, learning from what not to do or do when you're on stage, um, uh, learning how to just relax yourself, not be uptight. These all come with trial and error. This all comes with experience and trying things over and over. So again, when I do the vocals, I'm alone. I'm in my studio, and I do stuff. I sit down, I listen. Then I'll walk away, because I won't push it. I won't sit there for 5 hours trying to beat myself up over something. walk away, come back, and just have this kind of casual attitude of I'll know when it's the right way to be. But the melodies actually are coming to me while I'm listening back to the recorded guitars, for example, or the music. I'll sit here and I'll just start, like I have my lyric book here, and I'll just start. I'll jot some lines, and things change as we go along, but the melodies usually will come as I'm sitting there repeatedly listening to the music too. So sometimes it happens at the same time. Sometimes it happens like that song Shards of Glass actually just happened in literally 5 minutes. I just picked up the guitar, started playing, and I wanted a certain vibe, a certain approach, and the melody happened at the same time. And I just started singing these words because I'm good at jingles. Like I'm good at making up lyrics on like almost like how a rap artist maybe would do. So I'll say anything, but as long as I capture that melody in my head, that's how things develop. So of course the words will change later on, but I could be singing about, how my daughter made a bunch of crumbs on the table, and then I'm a big teaser. All I do is walk around the house making up songs, and that's something I've done since day one. I used to do that to Peter in the van and make fun of him when he wanted to go home. So I would make up songs all the time. So I developed this knack of on the fly, boom, on the fly, boom, and so a lot of times this is how it happens for me. And then I'm like, oh, that sounds great. I got to remember this. I gotta jot it down, and
It goes from there.
yeah.
I find it interesting what you said earlier on, that you had some guys that you try to work with, but their work ethic wasn't good. It's hard to find good help these days. So when you want something done the right way, the best thing to do is just do it yourself. At least I truly believe in that myself, because I sometimes it's hard for people to find your vision, and to be able to match the expectations that you have of what the end result is going to be. So it's just better. It's not like you're a perfectionist. You just want things done a certain way, and sometimes the best way is to do it yourself.
I didn't get to do the things I did by being lazy. That's the bottom line. And for some reason, especially with social media, you got musicians and bands that think all they got to do is create a page and they should have instant success via likes overnight. Anyone that is successful will tell you they put a lot of hard work into it. In any business or any career, doctor, it's going to take a lot of. You want to be anything.
Mm-hmm.
It just takes work, and there's this new thing going on where people want to click a button and get it now, like Amazon. Click on it, you bought it, it's here in a day, right? 2 days. So there's this I want it now attitude. So you got bands that kind of come together and they want it now, and they want to instantly sound great like the big bands or something. But the bands that are big right now are all the bands that lived through a time where we didn't have this garbage. Metallica, Testament, or Megadeth, or Black Sabbath, or Ozzy. These are all bands that started when we didn't have even the internet. They were built through word of mouth. They were built by hanging out at the clubs and passing out flyers and demo tapes. And that's why there's such a core following for those bands. So the bands of today may think they're going to be big because they have 50,000 likes or something, but it's all shallow, make-believe, virtual bullshit, literally just bullshit. And I think that's part of the problem why people don't leave their houses to go see bands also, before the pandemic. Now I think a lot of people learned to value lesson, and they're going to make sure they see a band when it comes through, if they come through, because right now concerts are far and few in between, right? So
I agree with you 100% on that. I think the pandemic has put a little bit of an urge in people to realize that, hey, this is not a given. Yeah. This is not a given. We have to take care of the ecosystem if the ecosystem is to survive. And so I think if there's a bright side of this whole disaster, is perhaps fans realizing that everything is very fickle, and if we don't take good care of it, if we're not there to support it, it won't be there for us in return.
Yeah, I would play a show in Jersey or something, and all these people writing to me, I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna be there, I'm coming out, I'm coming out. And it's like, wow, okay. I guess you think I'm gonna be there next week again, and then all of a sudden, it's taken away from everybody. I mean, yeah, you got your local bands that are playing, but hey, I know people that are doing local shows and their band is catching COVID, so I don't know. Is it smart to be in a hot, sweaty club right now that has a 200 capacity? I don't know. No
Yeah.
ventilation? I mean, use your best judgment. That's what everybody needs to do right now. Use your
It's just
best
that
judgment.
there's not a lot of good judgment going around. One last question for you about this record, and that is, looking back now at all the work that you put into this album, all the sweat, blood, and tears, the long hours that you put into this record. Looking back, what do you feel is the most gratifying aspect of this album for you?
Just hearing the fans when they say, I love it. This is exactly what I needed. This is exactly what I hoped for. This is exactly what I wanted. I did have a lot of fans come to me from the previous record saying, Sal, what happened? I can't even, I don't understand what happened, or they weren't entirely satisfied, or I can't hear your voice or something. Sounds muddy. What happened? You need to get a new mixer or something. And so to hear people tell me this video blew me away, this song is great, because we only let out now 3 singles.
Mm-hmm.
So the label, they released Believe in Something. Then they released Shards of Glass, which is like a radio vibey song, which I just write the way I write, but they felt that was a song to send to radio. But the one I was looking forward to was the one that came out the other day, Reflections of the Dead, which was probably one of my, again, you always wonder if you're ever going to make another song that's going to like previous songs that hit that nerve. So for me, I was looking forward to the song Reflections of the Dead coming out with the video, because I knew it was just going to be this bulldozer. After hearing the first 2 songs, everyone's going to make their judgments. Oh, I bet the whole record's like this, whatever. Or maybe they think it's going to be amazing, or whatever their view is on those 2 songs. I knew, regardless, this song was going to be the bulldozer. And I've had people ecstatic on the first 2 songs, and that's awesome, because it's what I want to hear. But I also knew Reflections of the Dead is the bulldozer. And there's a 4th song that is going to be released after the album is released for the people that didn't get the record, called Slaves to the Master. And that song for me is probably,
That's one of my favorites.
it's that's the one that you just like, you submerge yourself. It's so broken down, it's so simple, it's not all this guitar stuff in your face, there's no guitar solo, but
No, it's very
the
stripped down.
words really hit home, and that's a personal song to me. It is about chasing that dream. It is about being a slave to yourself, really, because it's kind of like, I am the master and I'm a slave to these crazy ideas I have, this crazy dream I've been chasing, and I see myself getting older and older, and I have to accept that dream is only a dream, maybe, I don't know. But the piano work, which I actually came up with that piano on my phone with a piano app in I think I was in North Carolina on tour in 2019, and I was up late after playing a show that night, and I just started doodling, and I recorded it band on my iPhone, and I said, wow, I have a feeling that this is gonna be something down the road. And sure enough, then I brought in all the other stuff that I wanted to do with that song, and it's one of my favorites, along with Reflections of the Dead. I think this record does show as heavy and doomy as it is, it shows a diverse instrumental approach, orchestrated approach, and an intelligent approach to beautiful music in the world, with the most simplest instruments in the world, and still be as heavy as fuck, and really just punch someone in the gut with them. It doesn't have to be chugging guitars from the beginning to the end nonstop, you know, or blast beats. Heavy listener will perceive it and how the artist. And so that's always my goal, is even the simplest 3 notes can maybe pull a heartstring and make you swell up with emotion or well up with tears. And that's always my my end goal.
Well, Sal, thank you very much for your time, man. I really appreciate you taking time today to chat with me about the record. I love this album.
Thank you.
You know, I have nothing but
Always an
love for
honor to
you.
talk to
Oh,
you.
it's my absolute honor and pleasure to have you on the channel again to talk about this record. Thank you for taking the time. I'm going to say best of luck, but also the biggest success possible for you on this record. I really feel like you hit a home run here. I love everything about this record. I was blown away by the quality of the album. So thank you for taking the time and chatting with me.
You got it, Pedro. Anytime. You're like one of the only cats that I thanked on the record.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
I
it.
think I listed 5 like industry people on that record, you know. So, but because you're so down to earth and real and sweet to me, I value that very much, because it's a fickle world. It's a fake world. Everyone just blows smoke up people's asses just to get somewhere, and I appreciate always genuine souls. So you're one of them.
Thank you. Thank you. All the best.
Likewise. All right, buddy.